Welcome to Browns Insider here on cleveland.com. 4 days of Browns training camp in the books in Berea. Joining me in studio today to wrap up day 4 is Dan Labbe. He was out in Berea, Browns training camp. They had the pads on once again, and there was a little bit of a scuffle there, Dan.
Yeah, there was. There was a big scuffle during 11 on 11 drills. Ben Tate kind of started it all, tossed a football at somebody, and then a whole bunch of other guys decided to get in on it. And actually, Mike-Pettine has been stressing competitiveness, not combativeness, but I think it was kind of good to see it today because, honestly, yesterday, first day of pads, it was really lackluster. It took guys a while to kind of get going. It took them a while to get into their first 11 on 11s, and I think today to kind of have that chippiness, the defense was barking. They added this contest where they do something at the end. It's like a best-of-5 series between the offense and defense. The winning guys get to wear orange jerseys on Thursday or whatever day is next, and I think it worked. I guess the high school, junior high tactics work sometimes at the NFL level.
So compare and contrast to me the way things are done right now in Berea with Pettine. He's a fiery guy. He's a tough guy. Everybody knows that about him compared to last year with Chud and the year before that with Pat Shermer, who was kind of looking lost in his first ever training camp.
Well, like you said, Pettine's an old school guy. He's a tough guy. He's a hard-nosed guy. So I think it's really been a down-to-business kind of camp. I wouldn't say it's really been a tough camp. It hasn't seemed like it. But they get down to business. The pace isn't exactly frenetic, but they work. They get what they need to do done. And actually, they've had some practices end early because he scripts a certain amount of plays. Once they get through that, they end practice. So like the first practice ended early, second practice yesterday, they went almost the full time. Today ended early. So he's got a plan. They go in, they execute that plan. They're efficient. They do their work, and then they get out.
Browns Insider here on cleveland.com, recapping day 4 of Browns training camp. If you have any questions, any comments, go to the comments section at the bottom of the post. You can leave those comments. You can also ask any questions there. Dan was checking out the inside linebackers. We'll get into that battle. We'll talk about the latest with Josh Gordon, what it could mean with the wide receivers, how the Browns are handling him. But of course, Dan, the question on everybody's mind every single day is the quarterback battle. Brian Hoyer versus Johnny Manziel. All indications over the weekend were that Brian Hoyer was way ahead of Johnny Manziel. Is the gap still that far?
Yeah, I don't know if way ahead is really the way to put it. I think maybe because Brian Hoyer came in with a head start, he's going to have that, a little bit of a bigger lead than if they had come in even. But Hoyer looked really sharp on Sunday. I thought Manziel looked a lot better yesterday than he did the day before. Today, both quarterbacks threw a couple of interceptions. Neither quarterback really did anything that made you stop and say wow or anything like that. But with Hoyer, you're seeing a guy that's run a pro offense before. You're seeing a guy that knows how to get in there and execute an offense. With Manziel, you're seeing a guy that I think is struggling with the installs a little bit, especially on Sunday. I think you're seeing a guy that kind of gets out of the pocket a little bit too quickly and a guy that's really still just learning how to run an offense at the NFL level. I mean, we're not tackling yet. He's not getting hit, but it's still a challenge. It's very different than when he was at Texas A&M, and I think he's still learning how to run that offense. Now, yesterday, they did start to move him out of the pocket a little bit more, which was good to see. But right now, Hoyer definitely has the edge, and I think a lot of that is just because he's been here, he's run an offense before.
The amazing thing is, when it comes to this rookie class, everybody talks about Manziel. Nobody really talks about Justin Gilbert or Christian Kirksey or Terrence West or any of these guys because it's all Manziel. When you have him in the class, you're just going to go right to him. But reading your stuff on cleveland.com, Mary Kay Cabot on cleveland.com, Tom Reed on cleveland.com, it seems like these other rookies are overshadowing Manziel. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, everybody at camp is going to watch those quarterbacks. But Justin Gilbert, for example, had a really good day today. He struggled his first day. I don't know if it was the cleats or what. He was slipping all over the place. But ever since then, he's done a lot better. You're not seeing him get beat as often. He came up with an interception today. Kirksey was kind of the talk of camp yesterday. So these other guys kind of get the benefit, I think, of fans and media coming in and focusing on Johnny Manziel. They just kind of get to show up and do what they do, and because of that, they're benefiting and they're outperforming what Manziel has done.
Everybody knows that the quarterback battle is going to be a huge storyline throughout this offseason. It's probably going to determine how successful or how poorly the Browns play this season. But is there another battle that you've kind of kept your eye on that you feel like is going to make a big difference when the regular season rolls around?
Well, you're going to like this one, because
right.
I know you're a Ben Tate guy.
Yeah.
I know when they signed Ben Tate, you were celebrating like crazy. Ben Tate and Terrence West is really interesting. This kind of whole stable of running backs is interesting because it could be very, very good or it could be very, very mediocre. But the Ben Tate Terrence West battle, Ben Tate has come out and said nobody in that room scares him. Terrence West isn't going to back down. He's small, but he's not real tall, but he's big. He's like a bowling ball out there. A very powerful runner. He's quick. He's one of those guys that can hide behind the line of scrimmage and kind of sneak out behind the offensive line. I think that's the most interesting battle because even though Ben Tate was your big free agent signing, look, if Terrence West comes in and wins that job, he'll certainly have earned it, and he can certainly have an impact.
But then you mentioned they're not doing a lot of hitting, they're not doing a lot of tackling to the ground. So how much can you really see from these running backs?
Running backs, linebackers, defensive linemen, offensive line, those are all positions it's so hard to tell what they can do. Thursday, we're supposed to see live tackling, which we haven't seen in Berea for a long time. So that should be very interesting to see guys actually tackled to the ground. Anybody that's not wearing that orange quarterback jersey, of course. But look, the running backs, West is a power runner. Ben Tate's a guy that likes to use power in his running game as well. So I think it's kind of hard to judge those guys until they can lower the shoulder and run somebody over.
The other big question looming over this franchise is what's going to happen with Josh Gordon. Obviously, his appeal is set for August 3rd. He just hired a high-profile lawyer, the same guy that helped Richard Sherman win his appeal, so Sherman wouldn't be suspended for the Seahawks. So who knows what's going to happen with that whole appeal. But what can you tell me about the way that the Browns are handling Josh Gordon when it comes to his reps and the team that he's running with and things like that?
They've kind of moved Gordon all around. I've seen him go out there with the first team kind of sparingly. He's usually on one of the lower teams. But he is out there. He's making plays. The quarterbacks are looking for him. It's actually really kind of sad to watch Josh Gordon because you know what's probably going to happen with him. Now, obviously, maybe something will come up and he'll get to play week 1 in Pittsburgh. Probably not. You may not see Josh Gordon all season long. And it's really depressing when you're at camp and you see him doing things, making plays like he can make because everybody else works so hard out there. And Josh Gordon makes it look so easy. He just runs his routes, he glides, he just reaches up and snaps the football out of the air. You see that, and you just realize how much these quarterbacks and this whole offense is going to miss that this year.
Gordon, Dan, won his appeal last year, went from 4 games to 2 games. So let's say, for example, it does go in the Browns' favor and in Gordon's favor, and it goes from the entire season maybe to 8. How does that change the things that they can do offensively? How does it change your perception of the team?
Well, obviously it's big because at that point you're just trying to do stopgap things. Get through the first 8 games and then open up your playbook a little bit. If he's gone the whole season, there's no stopgap about it. This is the team you have. One of the concerns I think with this wide receiver group is it's small.
Yeah.
Miles Austin is a big guy, but that's really about it. Anthony Armstrong, kind of a big guy. So they're a small wide receiver group. I think you almost have to have more of an offense that focuses on getting these guys across the middle, using their speed. With Josh Gordon, especially if Johnny Manziel is your starting quarterback, how would you love to see Gordon in that Mike Evans role?
Oh my goodness.
Manziel scrambles around and just throw the ball down the field and Gordon goes and gets it. You're not going to have that. So it's just the difference between, is this your offense the whole season, 1 through 16, or do you just kind of have to scrape by for half a season or whatever it is, and then in the second half, you can really make a push?
You've been chronicling a lot of these training camp battles, these different positions. When it comes to wide receiver, who is the Browns' best wide receiver not named Gordon?
I really like what I've seen out of Andrew Hawkins. He's quick, he's small, he's 5'7".
Yeah.
He talked to us today. This is one of those few times where everyone in the media and the scrum towered over him. He was looking up at us. But
normally you have the microphone and you're holding it way up to Joe Thomas, something along those lines.
But I really like what I've seen from Hawkins. He's just everywhere. You watch him in these drills, especially in 11 and 11s, and he's the type of guy that excels in 7-on-7 too, obviously, because it's wide open. There's lots of room for him to run. But if they're able to get him open and get him the football, I think he can do some really good things for this team. I don't know about his hands worry me a little bit. I watched him fielding some punts. He had some trouble with it. I watched him bobble a couple footballs. But then at the same time, I see Joe Hayden not come up with an interception. The ball pops up in the air. Right place, right time for Hawkins. He comes up with it. He's that type of receiver. I think he's a guy that fans will really like if he can do what he's capable of doing.
At training camp, Dan, there's always that one guy who kind of comes out of nowhere. You don't really expect it to happen. It was Ben Gay a couple of years ago. It even happens in the NBA. That's how Matthew Dellavedova got noticed. So who's the guy so far at training camp that not a lot of people are talking about, that's a little bit under the radar, but is making a name for himself?
Boy, that's a really great question. I'm going to stick with the receiving core. I don't know if you call him necessarily an under-the-radar guy, because I think he's a guy people knew about, but I've kind of liked what I've seen out of a guy like Anthony Armstrong.
Yeah, you can call him that. He was going to be a substitute teacher if he didn't make it in the NFL.
He hasn't blown anyone away.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's necessarily been a guy, I could be forgetting about someone who has come out of nowhere to just floor people, but I think Armstrong is a guy that could certainly make the roster and could certainly be a part of this receiving core, one of those guys that could take advantage of an opportunity if Josh Gordon is unable to play.
Through 4 days, who's the best rookie?
The best rookie is probably, I'm going to go based off today. I thought Justin Gilbert was the best rookie.
Good. That's good for the Browns because if you remember, last year, one of the biggest issues they had, offensively or defensively, is that number 2 wide receiver, the guy that went bananas all the time opposite Joe Hayden.
And you know what? Actually, I would also say Terrence West. I kind of forget about him just speaking about today because he was sort of quiet today. But previously, he's been very good as well.
How about the best play so far that you've seen in training camp in 4 days?
The best play that I have seen. Let's go with, I'm kind of stumped on this one, Fedor. The best play that I've seen.
I know there was that big bomb from Hoyer. I know a lot of people really like that thing.
Yeah, there was that one. Man.
How about my boy Barkevius Mingo with his interception?
Yeah, that was good. I thought Gilbert's interception was really good today. Okay. I'm going to go with that one just because it's freshest in my mind.
It's amazing. We really haven't been able to pinpoint anything positive from Johnny Manziel. I mean, does that concern you at all? I know it's early. It's only 4 games, but here's a guy who you can't really say anything positive about after 4 days. The one thing that you know about him is that he showed up in bright neon yellow cleats. Aside from that, what has he done?
Yeah, it's been very quiet for Manziel, but at the same time, I don't know that Hoyer has done anything spectacular that's made you just stop and say, yeah, this is the guy for sure. Again, with Manziel, I think it's a lot of just installing that offense. And I don't know if it's fair to say he's behind. He probably is. He could probably know a little more about this offense than he does. And I think that's holding him back a little bit. You can see it every now and again. He'll maybe make one read and try and get out of the pocket. There's a learning curve with this kid, and I think it's going to be a little bigger than people expect. I know you think Manziel's going to start week 1.
I do.
Not having seen this guy play an actual NFL game, that scares me, honestly, to have him out there in week 1.
I can understand that. Do you think at all the Browns are concerned at where Johnny is after 4 days?
No, and I don't think there's reason to be concerned, again, because we're 4 days into camp. And we got to wait to see what this guy does in an actual game, what he does. Sometimes some guys, and would it surprise you if Johnny Manziel was one of these guys, maybe don't blow you away in practice, and then the pads go on for real, and you get out there for real, the clock starts going, guys start chasing you, that switch just flips. To me, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Johnny Manziel was that type of guy.
All right, you've got to help me out with something here, Dan, because the Browns, right before training camp started, on the Friday, they had their conditioning test. And there were 2 guys that night that did not finish the conditioning test. One was Gary Barnidge, the other was Phil Taylor. So they come back the next day, and they go through that conditioning test. And one guy failed the test, again, and it was Phil Taylor. How is it possible that you know that this conditioning test is coming, you've had the entire off season to get yourself ready for it, and you can't pass, and therefore you can't be on the field with your team right now?
That's a rough guy to not have out there, too, because we've seen the impact that Phil Taylor can have, and it's disappointing. That's maybe the biggest disappointment in camp so far. You haven't had a big injury or anything like that. The most disappointing thing is that one of your best defensive players can't even pass a conditioning test, and The team has been pretty mum about it. Mike-Pettine on Saturday basically responded he's just rehabbing. He didn't say what he was rehabbing. He's just rehabbing. So I don't know if he's rehabbing being out of shape. I don't know if there's an actual injury there, but they got to get Taylor out there.
Yeah, I would think so. All right, that's it. Appreciate you joining me today in studio. 4 days in Berea have wrapped up. Dan will be there again. They practice again tomorrow. Thursday, they're going to bring people to the ground. So that's
Thursday,
a really
they're
big
going
day.
to coming off the day off, and they're going to start live tackling.
Thanks to all of you for your questions and your comments in the comment section at the bottom of the post. We recap it every single day right here on Browns Insider on cleveland.com.